So today we are going to be talking about how to optimize your site for maximum conversions. And when we talk about this, I'm going to go through what exactly this means, but we're going to talk about a lot of different angles in terms of optimizing not only your website, but how traffic gets to your website and how it performs on your website. So let me introduce myself. I'm Ryan Morgan. I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing at Aztec. For those of you that don't know, Aztec is a digital marketing, web design, and web development agency located in Cleveland, Ohio. We've been around for over 20 years, and as I mentioned, we do everything digital. So from web design and redesigns, web development, application development, mobile development, to everything under the digital marketing umbrella. So today what we're going to talk about is optimizing for conversions. And I want to just set some quick definitions about what we mean when we say optimization and conversions. So here's a fairly technical definition of optimization. It's the technical and marketing techniques used to acquire traffic, engage visitors, and then convert them into prospects or buyers based on predefined goals. Now, this is fairly lengthy, but I really want to focus on the technical and marketing techniques. We're going to focus on what we can do to optimize for conversions. And again, when we talk about conversions, it's going to mean something different to everyone, right? So when we talk about conversions, it could mean things like getting a quote request or driving more e-commerce sales, driving more downloads of assets or resources, getting more newsletter signups, having more individuals requesting a demo if you have a more advanced product or service, getting more webinar signups, contact form submissions, event registrations. All of these are great examples of conversion points, and they're going to be different for every organization. So I would encourage you to identify what are the conversion points that your organization has that you want to optimize for. So we're going to talk today about 4 different areas of optimization that I think are important today. The first is search engine optimization. The second is conversion rate optimization. The third is website speed optimization. And then the final one is user experience. And all of these are going to play a role in driving more conversions to your site. So let's start out with search engine optimization. And we just did a webinar about a month ago where we went much more in depth about search engine optimization. I'm going to kind of scratch the surface today about the things that are important from an SEO performance standpoint that can really impact, again, those conversion points, driving the right people to your site. So again, let's define this. When we talk about search engine optimization, we're talking about the practice of increasing the quantity and quality of traffic to your site through organic search engine results. So we want to bring more better people to your site that are more likely to convert, whether that is purchasing something from your site, generating leads, or a softer conversion point like downloading resources, signing up for a newsletter, something like that. So when I think about SEO, I think of kind of this pyramid approach where we really have to have a strong foundation before we start building up even further. And you can see how I've laid out this approach, and I think it's really important to lay the foundation before moving on to the next steps. So let's first talk about foundational SEO and what that means. This is where I think everyone should start and have a baseline in terms of the things that they should do before they're able to move on. And those things include making sure that you have a secure website. So if your site doesn't start with HTTPS, that means it's likely not secure. This is one of the easiest things that you can do, installing what's called an SSL certificate on your site to make sure it's secure. And this is something that Google pays a lot of attention to these days because they really want to drive their traffic to secure experiences. The second thing is your site mobile friendly? We're going to talk about usability a little bit later, but one of the signals, Google really looks at indexing sites from a mobile first perspective these days. And if your site is not user friendly from a mobile device, not only is Google going to share that when they show your results in the search results, but they're also going to it's going to have an impact on your search ranking in Google search results, and it's going to be a negative impact. And then finally, you want to make sure that your site is accessible, that Google's robots can actually read it, right? So you want to make sure that you have a sitemap for your site that tells search engines, here are the pages that we want you to include. And there's also a file called a robots.txt file that is included on your site that will tell Google, these are the pages that we do and don't want you to index. Because there may be some pages that you don't want Google to be showing in the rankings, but you also want to make sure that Google has access to the pages that you do. So this is really the technical foundation to make sure that you have before moving on to some of the latter steps. So once you have that basic, that foundation, you can move on to basic SEO. And this really entails making sure that the SEO tags on every page of your site are up to date, accurate, consistent, targeted. So on every page, you've got a meta title and meta description. And you can see in this image that the title tag and the description are actually what's going to show up in Google search results. So it's really important that you have the right keywords, that they would actually explain what the page is about. These are really important things. And then you also have things like header tags throughout the page. And we're going to talk about content in a minute, but these header tags, think of them as headers in any piece of content. They help Google understand what the context of a page is. And then you also have image alt tags, which are basically tags behind every image that tell Google and other search engines what that image is, what that image is about. So these are really important kind of basic SEO steps that you can take to make sure you're optimizing each page on a very basic level. The next thing, and really if we could expand this pyramid, probably 60 to 75% of the pyramid would be content, because this is the most important thing when it comes to SEO these days. The things that we really want to focus on are making sure that your pages are focused on the right keywords. For every one of your pages, you should have keywords or at least a topic that you're aiming to have that page perform well for, and that you're writing to speak to that specific topic. And you're including those keywords naturally in the copy. You're not overstuffing too many of those keywords in the copy, but you're writing to those specific keywords. Your content should be focused on user intent. So when you think about those keywords that you want to write a page for, when someone searches for that, what are they looking for? You know, if they search for a specific ingredient, are they looking for a recipe? Are they looking for where to buy it? So you really need to understand the user intent. You need to make sure that you're answering the user's questions. You know, when we think about this for our content and we have a page about SEO services, for example, we might want to think about what users may want to know. How much does it cost? How long does it take? What are the things that you're going to need from me as an organization to do SEO on my website? The more we can answer the user's questions, the better the content that we provide is. I really encourage clients and prospects to go for depth over length. You know, one of the common questions that we get is, how long should my content be? And I think a better question is, how deep should my content be? Because you can take a 500-word piece of content and make it 2,500 words, and it may not perform any better. Adding words doesn't necessarily mean it's going to perform better, but if you're able to add depth, and what I mean by that is better answer those questions, think about the user intent, and add the right contextual type of content. Oftentimes adding depth does mean adding more words, but it's more focused on adding the right kinds of words. And I would encourage everyone to focus more on depth rather than just adding as many words as they can. And then good content often has, you know, strong text is really the core of it, well-written copy, but it also has images to really break up that text and provide more context. Multimedia is great if you can add it, whether it's video or infographics or something else. These are great opportunities not only to add more context to that specific piece of content, but also to make sure that there's additional information that the user and also search engines can see to understand what the page is about. And then the top of this pyramid is really advanced SEO, and these are tactics like link building. So once you have great content, you can go out there and attempt to get links back to your site. And these links are a really valuable ranking signal for Google. They essentially say, well, here's these other reputable sites that are linking to my page or to my site. And it helps Google understand, okay, this site or this page is actually a trusted resource. Metadata, schema, and rich snippets. If you've ever asked a question to Google and seen an answer box pop up right at the top, this is likely because that page uses some code behind the scenes that tells Google what that piece of information is. You'll hear this called metadata or schema markup or rich snippets. This can be valuable in terms of getting your information directly in those kind of unique feature boxes in Google. We're going to talk about page speed a little bit later, but page speed is absolutely one of the ranking signals for Google and for SEO today. We're going to talk about usability a little bit later. Again, usability is one of the big ranking factors for Google today. And then, we talked about content, but once you've optimized that content once, there's always opportunities to continue to optimize it based on what you're seeing in search results. So performing more in-depth content updates as the content changes, as time goes on, are always going to be advantageous efforts when it comes to SEO. So let's talk about conversion rate optimization. We just talked about search engine optimization, and this is really our effort to try and get people to our site, to try and get more of the right people to our site. Conversion rate optimization is more focused on making sure that once we get those people to the site, they're taking the actions that we want them to take. And we went through what some of those conversions are. It could be an e-commerce sale, it could be lead generation, or it could be something as simple as a newsletter sign up, but we want to increase our chances in doing that. And usually what we're doing here is we're testing variations of pages. Conversion rate optimization also often focuses on A/B testing, where you have one current variation of a page and you're creating another variation of a page to see if it performs better, to see if it gives you more of the outcomes that you're looking for. So if we have a page and we change that page, and we're going to walk through some of the things that you can change, are we able to increase our ability to drive more leads throughout the process? And that's really what conversion rate optimization is. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do as it relates to conversion rate optimization. The first thing is really looking at the layout. And when I talk about this, I mean relatively similar copy, imagery, content, but you're changing the layout to see if emphasizing certain things or moving things around impact the way that people interact with the site. You can see in this example something simple. They may have broken the headline into a sub-headline and a main headline as opposed to one big block. They've done some things in terms of change the alignment. So they've done some layout changes to see if that impacts conversion rate. Another thing you can test is headline and body copy. You can see here two variations of a landing page where they use very different headlines to test to see which one of those is more compelling to the user. And ultimately, in this case, they're likely testing which leads to more signups, right? More people clicking this button. So headline and body copy is another thing that you can test. Imagery is a big thing that you can test. In this case, we see two different examples, and very commonly we see a female and a male. We often see imagery tests where you have something more abstract or something with people in it. So really trying to test and understanding what imagery resonates with your audience, resonates with the visitors of that page, is a great thing to test as well. Forms and calls to action. I will tell you from experience that one of the things that clients and prospects are often challenged with is they have a landing page or a page and they have a form and it's just not getting conversions. It's just not getting people filling it out. And there's a couple things you can do with that. First thing is you can think about, in this case, they have this form and they actually scaled it back. They scaled down the number of fields. So maybe you have too many pieces of information that you're trying to collect and it's intimidating for users. So that's certainly something that you can A/B test. Oftentimes, websites will have a form, but it's a very hard sell kind of form. It's a get a quote, contact a salesperson, which is really in the buying decision stage of that user's journey. And oftentimes we'll recommend testing a variant to that form that's a little bit of a softer conversion point. Maybe it is downloading a guide or a white paper or a resource that helps them more in the evaluation stage, which is maybe more where they're at as opposed to the buying stage. So these are things that you can test when you're looking at your forms and your calls to action. And then page length. So we can see here an initial page where they have a lot of stuff on the page. They've got a big header section, they've got content, they've got images, they have lots of sections, and this page goes down and down and down. And they tested this variant where they simplified it considerably. They have one much larger image. They have a couple callouts. They do a much better job of kind of chunking information in terms of bullets and check marks and things like that. And what we're seeing here is, in this case, a significantly higher conversion rate when they simplified the page. So simplifying the page does not always lead to a higher conversion rate. Sometimes users need to see more information to get that conversion, but testing it is an important step. So when it comes to testing platforms, right now at Aztec, our platform of choice is Google Optimize. It is a free platform. It allows you to run, at this point in time, 5 tests at a time. It's relatively easy to set up. And it allows us to integrate into specific goals that we've created to identify conversion rate improvements or decreases. There's a lot of other A/B testing and conversion rate optimization platforms out there. Some of those include Optimizely, Visual Website Optimizer, Crazy Egg, and you can certainly do a Google search for A/B testing or conversion rate optimization to find a slew more of platforms. So let's talk about website speed. I alluded to this a little bit earlier in that website speed is becoming a very important ranking signal for Google. But frankly, when we look at it, it's also just really important for usability. We can see this stat as the page time load goes from 1 second to 3 seconds, from 1 to 5, that the probability of bouncing, meaning that person is going to leave that site, increases dramatically. And the rationale here is, and we've all been in this situation, we go to a site or we go to a page and it's loading and we get impatient. We want things fast these days. I certainly would include myself in that group. And we don't have a tolerance for really slow loading pages. So if a page loads slow, what's going to happen is we're going to go back to those Google search results, or we're going to go somewhere else and likely hit one of the competitor sites. And that's not a good thing. So page speed optimization is a really important factor today. Now, one of the best tools that's out there is a free tool called Google Page Speed Insights. You can just go to Google and search for it. You'll find it. And what it allows you to do is put any page on your site, put in the URL, and it will give you both a mobile and desktop score from 0 being the slowest site to 100 being the fastest site. And not only will it give you that and give you a really great benchmark of where you're at today, but it will give you explicit recommendations in terms of the things that you can do to speed up the site, and it actually helps you prioritize those recommendations as well. So this is a great tool in terms of taking the first step into optimizing your page speed. And typically when we look at these things, there's 3 pretty big offenders of a really slow site. The first one is huge high-resolution images. Now, we all want really sharp, high-resolution imagery and video on our sites, but there are more and more ways in the modern web to optimize these, to compress these images in a way that you don't really lose too much of that definition. And there are also techniques, including if you've heard of lazy loading, where you load those after the page has loaded so that these images don't hold up the entire loading of the page. Images and video are two of the very common offenders of slow sites. Browser caching is in essence, when you visit a site and all those images and assets load, what your browser can do is actually save those images locally to your device so that the next time you visit that page, they're already there and they're already loaded, and it doesn't need to load those images again. And there are different things that you can do with setting browser caching so that it can significantly increase the performance of your site, especially for those visitors that return after they've visited once. This is another common recommendation that you're going to see in something like Google PageSpeed Insights. And then the last big offender we see is what I would call code bloat or unused code. Many sites have lots of code that is sitting around unused. They have code in 15 different files when it could be condensed down to 3 or 5 different files. And there's a lot of techniques in terms of combining and minimizing code that can save a lot of load time as well. So many of these are fairly technical approaches, but they're the common things that you may see in a report from PageSpeed Insights that are things that are, those big win types of approaches that you can take to improving the speed of your website. So lastly, let's talk about user experience. And again, I mentioned that user experience is becoming an increasingly important ranking signal for Google as well. And just like page speed, if you have a poor page speed, if a site is not optimized, 79% of the users will leave and search for another site to complete the task. Again, if you do this, you're risking people coming to your site and saying, this is a horrible experience. I can't navigate this. This is frustrating. We've probably all been there as well. And leaving and likely going to one of your competitors' sites. And we don't want this to happen. So usability is becoming increasingly more important. Some of the big offenders and the things that you should focus on, having a mobile-friendly site is of critical importance these days. I mentioned that Google, when they index sites for their search rankings, they have what's called mobile-first indexing, which means that they no longer look at sites as if they were on a desktop computer. They look at sites as if they were on a mobile device. So if your site is not mobile-friendly, it's going to get dinged in search performance, and it may also get a warning in search results that alerts users that it's not mobile friendly. That, in addition to the fact that just looking at these two examples, anytime we have very small text or have to pinch and zoom to read, it's really challenging to use a site like that. Readability is a really important thing, especially when you have a site that isn't mobile friendly. But even if you do, that has really small text or text that isn't formatted well for reading on a multitude of devices, that's a really important thing to look at. And I think what we're seeing is, on the right-hand side, we have an example of the Washington Post, completely responsive site. And essentially, this is really easy to read. What we're seeing is this trend towards larger text, much more readable. And on the left-hand side, we see a site that you're going to have to do a lot of pinching and zooming, and it becomes really challenging. I do want to take a short break. We have one comment about a participant not being able to hear. I want to send out a quick message just to make sure that everyone else can hear me. If you can, please put a comment in the chat. Just let me know that you can hear me. Okay, we did get a comment that we can hear. Rachel, what we are going to do is we are recording this, and we will send a recorded version of this. So apologies that you're having technical difficulties. We can send the recap afterwards. So getting back into usability, one of the things that we're seeing is, we see a lot of websites where there's so much valuable content that site owners want to put into a site that it all gets dumped into one place. And what we call this is kind of the wall of text effect. And essentially what's happening is you have all this text and it's not broken up. And we know that users these days really like to scan websites. They like to browse. They're not doing large swaths of reading by and large. So, from a usability perspective, we really like to look at this and break it up with images, with bulleted lists, with numbered lists, with videos, really taking a broader approach and shortening those paragraphs. There is definitely a difference in how text is written for the web versus how text is written for print and magazines and other applications. So it's important to break up those walls of text. One of the final things that we see in terms of a usability challenge is something that Google calls interstitials. These are more commonly referred to as pop-ups. And what Google has come out and said is that interstitials and things that actually interrupt the experience of using your site actually take away from the experience, and they could impact search performance in a negative way. You can see this is an example of two pop-ups that are showing up on top of each other, which is a really poor user experience. When we come to a site, we typically have a goal and we're trying to do something very specific. So when we interrupt that goal as site owners, we're taking someone away from their original purpose. And again, this is one of the more common causes of someone bouncing or abandoning that site. So we've talked about some of the ways that sites can be optimized to maximize conversions. I want to leave you with 10 actionable website optimizations. Hopefully you can take a handful of these and put these into action into your digital marketing strategy. And then we're going to walk through a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to start populating those in the chat. And we'll get to those once we get through this list. So number one, I mentioned this already, run a site speed test. This is quick and free. If you use a tool called Google Page Speed Insights, it's going to let you input your actual URL, and it's going to let you have a prioritized list of the things that you can do to optimize the speed of your site. And this is really important because it's a big ranking factor, it's a big usability factor, and this is probably a 5 to 10 minute activity that will give you a nice roadmap for optimizing the speed of your site. We talked about usability and how important mobile usability is. Google also has a free platform called Google Search Console. We use this a lot at Aztec. And what this allows you to do is add your domain into Google Search Console, and you can see the mobile errors that are occurring according to Google. So this is going to help you identify when text is too small or content is wider than a mobile device screen, clickable elements are too close together or too small. And again, it's going to help you clean up some of the usability issues that are going to help you not only improve your user experience for users on all devices, but show Google that you have a site that is free of errors and very usable for mobile users as well. The third thing is I would recommend taking a look at some of your important pages and optimizing SEO tags for those important pages. So again, take a look at the title tag and description. Make sure that they are accurate, complete, focused on some of the keywords that you want to focus on. Make sure those pages have the right header tags. So make sure that you have put in those header tags the right keywords. Make sure you're using H1 and H2 and H3 properly, and I'm happy to walk through in a little bit more depth what that means. Make sure all of your images have a corresponding alt tag that tells Google what that image is. The fourth thing is improve your web page layout. This is an example of a site that Aztec actually worked on, and on the left we can see that we have a page that has, frankly, a lot going on. There's content, but there's very little hierarchy in understanding what am I supposed to look at as a user. And when we were able to rework this to really create a better hierarchy and simplify the information, create chunks of it in nice lists, we were able to significantly improve the performance of this page. The fifth thing, run an A/B test for an important landing page. If you're doing any paid campaigns or you find that one of the pages on your site gets a lot of traffic, pick that and use a tool like Google Optimize. And I saw that Leah asked, what is the usability tool again? Google Optimize is my favorite. It's free and it allows you to run these tests. There are certainly other good ones. And just to run through that list, Optimizely, Visual Website Optimizer, Crazy Egg are some of the ones that we've used with success. And remember, some of the things that you can test are things like layout, page copy, imagery, calls to action. You can go as far as changing the button color to see if that impacts conversions, see if a longer or shorter page is going to work better. Even adding testimonials and reviews for some of that social proof to show people that visit that site, hey, there are other people that have validated that this is a good product or service. So setting this up is relatively easy. And again, Google Optimize is a great tool to do this, free tool that lets you kind of get started in A/B testing. Add a softer conversion point. I mentioned that one of the challenges that many of our clients and prospects have is that they have these forms on their site and they're just not getting, they're either getting no conversions or they're getting very little. And oftentimes that's an indicator that it's just too hard of a conversion point. If it's a get a quote or talk to a salesperson, the visitors of that page may not be ready to talk to a salesperson. That's a pretty big commitment because when you fill out that form, you know that the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a call from a salesperson. And for some people, they may be in that realm, they may be ready for that. But for others, they're still in the exploratory research phase where they want information. So we can see an example here of instead of signing up for a demo, Salesforce is offering a white paper that will cover how to get started with Salesforce marketing automation. So much more in the exploratory and research-based phase of the buyer's journey. Number 7, and this could very well be number 1, secure your website. This is a simple one that should take you 5 minutes to check. Go to your website today. If it starts with HTTP, you want to make sure that you get that secure. It's a really simple process. It's something that Aztec can help with. It's also something that many organizations can do on their own. But not only is this going to help you in search rankings, it's just going to provide a better user experience having a secure site for your visitors. Number 8, update the content of an important page. So if you remember, content is really the 60 to 75% of importance when it comes to SEO. Here's a really quick approach to updating the content to be better for users and to be better for SEO. First thing, take that piece of content. What do you think it should be ranking for? And search for some of those keywords. Find what's ranking in the 1st through 5th positions and look at those pages. What does the content do differently? What are they doing that your page is not doing? Take that and do it better. I know that sounds incredibly simplified, but taking that content that is ranking really well gives you a good sense of what Google is looking for those keywords. And if you can write it better with more expertise, and again, remember, more depth, you're going to give yourself a better chance. And I mentioned adding depth, not length. How can you understand what the user is looking for and the questions they have and provide that content within the actual content of the page? Leverage header tags. This is a really important part of SEO. It tells search engines what the page is about. If you're not leveraging header tags, not only to give search engines more context about what your page is about, but also just to break up from a usability perspective, large pieces of content, this is a great opportunity. Adding rich markup like schema markup. This can get into a little bit of a complex territory. There are some great resources out there. If you search for schema markup or metadata, they can help. But again, this allows you to give the right context to Google about what a page is actually about. And then consider adding media. Again, we talked about not only the benefit of this for breaking up the page, as it relates to having a lot of text and things like that, but images and video can be really great resources, not only for the user, but search engines see these, they understand the context of them, and they can help with the ranking of a page as well. We talked about images being one of those big offenders for really slow page speed. And I would highly recommend looking into compressing images or lazy loading images. Again, oftentimes compressing an image to a third of its size or even less can have such a minimal impact on how it looks if it's done the right way. And there are some really smart technologies that allow you to load these images in a way that you can load the page first and then load some of these images without the user really even being aware of it. And then lastly, and this is a very kind of a more broad recommendation, is identify where you have leaks in your conversion strategy. So oftentimes we have certain pages that have a higher bounce rate or a higher exit rate. Look at these pages and identify, why are people leaving these pages? Is the content not right? Does it not answer the right questions? Do we not have the right call to action or next step clarified for the user? You can go into Google Analytics, and this is something we help clients with, and take a look at the pages that have the highest bounce rates and have the highest exit rates. Where are people leaving your site? And take a look at those pages and use some of the things that we've talked about in this presentation to optimize those pages. So this can be a great strategy as well, albeit more of a broad, larger type of approach. So we've been through a lot in about a little over 35 minutes. We've talked about different types of optimization, and we've talked about some very specific recommendations for what you can do and take away from this to actually work on an optimization plan of your own. I'm going to open this up for Q&A. I would encourage anyone that has a question to throw a question in the chat. If you have questions about anything related to SEO or conversion rate optimization, we talked about site speed, and we also talked about usability. These are all really important aspects of conversion optimization and things that we look at on an ongoing basis. So I'm going to give us a minute or two here to see if any questions pop in. In the meantime, I hope everyone got a little bit more information on some steps that they can take from a conversion standpoint. I wanted to also share that as an organization, what we do is we typically offer a 30-minute strategy session, completely complimentary. I handle all these, and as a next step, if your organization is interested in thinking through a digital strategy, especially as it relates to anything that we talked about today, if you're looking to develop an SEO strategy, or really at a bigger scale, think about how can you optimize your site or increase conversions, increase lead generation. You can go to aztecweb.com/strategy, schedule some time with me to chat about this. I love having these conversations. And we'll do a little bit of pre-work to help you understand where your site is at today and help you develop a strategy for how you can move forward. So it doesn't look like we have any questions at this time. Again, if you have further, more in-depth questions, feel free to go to aztecweb.com/strategy, schedule some time with me. Otherwise, hopefully everyone had a few nice takeaways from this presentation, and we appreciate you attending today. Thanks, guys, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.